I hate to see headlines like this one, whether it's from a television news report or the New York Times, Washington Post, CNN. It doesn't make any difference. Associated Press. This is a headline. Biden sending more troops to Europe amid Ukraine tension. I mean, here we go again, right? Here we go again. We are committing military assets. I guess that's a phrase that is used. Military assets for another confrontation, this time with Russia. This is insanity, of course. I get forced into that mindset that I get forced into every once in a while, the one that says, what the hell is wrong with us? Us being humans. I mean, what the hell is wrong with us? Not just Americans, not just our foreign policy, but like I said, humans, all of us. What the hell is wrong with us? You know, I was born at a time of vicious, violent, global war. I mean, insane shit. Millions of people were being systematically exterminated for no reason other than for who they were. Nations were convulsing in firebombing. People were being incinerated in cities in Europe and Japan by the hundreds of thousands. Battles were going on all over Europe, North Africa, Asia, where thousands, tens, hundreds of thousands of people were being slaughtered. I was born into that. If you're of a certain age, so are you. And then it stopped. It didn't really stop. That's the wrong word. It reached a hesitation point. And then within 5 years, more war, this time in Korea. And then it stopped. And it didn't really stop. It reached a hesitation point. And then with 8 or 9 years, more war. This time in Vietnam. And then more war in Afghanistan, and more war in Iraq. And those are just our involvements. Meanwhile, the slaughter, the collective slaughter of human beings by the leaders of the old Soviet Union was massive. The slaughter of millions of people in China by the communists was massive. I mean, sometimes I just want to sit down and say to nobody in particular, what the fuck? Well, here we are again. 2,000 troops from Fort Bragg, North Carolina, are being sent to Poland and Germany. And about 1,000 of our soldiers in Germany will be shifted to Romania. That's according to an official announcement from the Biden administration this morning. Biden has said repeatedly that he will not commit American troops in Ukraine to fight any Russian incursion. No, we're supplying Ukraine with weapons. Massive amounts of weapons, is my understanding. Of course, you and I will never know how much is being shipped to Ukraine. Weapons with which Ukraine will be asked to defend itself, which is madness when you consider the military differential between Ukraine and Russia. I mean, come on. So this move to move U.S. troops into Middle Europe is happening because of the talks with Russia over its buildup at Ukraine's borders has stalled. And the fact that we're committing troops underscores these fears across Europe that the Russian dictator, Vladimir Putin, is poised to invade Ukraine. How long have we been hearing that? Of course, there are Russian troops already in eastern Ukraine. There were Russian troops that went in a couple years ago and snatched Crimea, or however you want to put it, So, Russian troops are already there. But the fears across Europe are that Putin is going to launch a full-scale invasion of Ukraine. I feel like we've been sitting on hair trigger go on that issue for weeks now, months. And this raises the fear in the smaller countries on NATO's eastern flank, like Romania, that they might be next. And, of course, Putin has said he has no intention of starting conflict, and he's willing to continue what he calls diplomatic efforts, right? Now, this information comes from a Biden administration official who spoke on condition of anonymity to discuss all this stuff, whatever has not yet been announced officially. So here we are. Biden said recently that he's going to provide additional U.S. forces to NATO allies in Eastern Europe as reassurance of our commitment, our military commitment to members of the NATO alliance. And the Biden administration also has put about 8,500 American troops on higher alert for possible deployment to Europe as more insurance or assurance to our NATO allies. And we already have between 75 and 80,000 troops in Europe permanently stationed there. Let's not forget that. And they are part of regular rotations, our troops, in places like Poland, or such as Poland. Yet we have close to 100,000 troops there already. And is Putin unaware of that? Well, of course he isn't. You know, Putin knows things about the U.S. military and our troop movements before the American public does, obviously. But think about it for just a second. If Putin forms some sort of a unforeseen alliance with Canada and or Mexico and or, Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, Venezuela, Brazil, and stationed 100,000 Russian troops permanently in Ontario province, in Canada, in the state of Oaxaca, in Mexico. I mean, what would we do? Please don't understand. I am not saying anything other than what I'm saying. And that is that the mindset of Putin, who knows he is confronted with American military might 10 minutes from Moscow, less than that, if rockets or missiles were to be launched. And what about our bases in Turkey? What about we still have base in Iraq, don't we? What about our allies that have encircled Russia? So I hate all of it, but it's easy, is it not, to understand Vladimir Putin's paranoia. The Russians, it's part of their national character, paranoia, fear, uncertainty. It's always been there. It's been there since the days of the czars. I mean, you can see it in their art, in their literature, in their music. It's always been there, the Russians. I don't know why. I'm not a student of Russian social history. I only know what I know. But what I do know is that the Russian mindset has always been defensive, frightened, worried. And then to have someone like Vladimir Putin, former top officer in the KGB, who worked in, shall we call it, the influence department of the KGB, to have him in charge, who understands all this stuff, who understands these terroristic actions without actually doing anything, just the presence of troops, the presence of the threat. He understands this. But he's the bad guy. He is our bad guy. The Russians have always been our bad guys ever since the Russian Revolution, when too many Americans decided that the Soviet model was the perfect antidote to insane capitalism. And then the powers that be in this country back in the 20s and 30s went totally apeshit. Out of fear of the Soviet model, the communist model. Oh, my God, what's going to happen to communism? I mean, to capitalism. It's supposed to be a red tide was going to hit the United States, which was, kind of bullshit to begin with. And then we had to make an alliance with Russia after Russia made an alliance with Hitler. An alliance of convenience. Hitler immediately turned around with knives in millions of hands and started stabbing Russians in the back and the front and the top and the side. How many Russians died in the Great War? 20 million, 25 million, 30 million? And we wonder why they might be a bit paranoid. Meanwhile, the United States, here we are way the fuck over here in somewhere between two massive oceans, isolated from, in a manner of speaking, from Europe, from Asia. We've always had that protection, haven't we? Okay, so ICBMs now, long-range bombers, missiles, this, that, and the other thing. Nobody's really safe anymore. But to my way of thinking, this is how this paranoid insanity started on the part, I'm talking about the Russians now, how they became so afraid. And then when the Soviet Union broke up and what the United States did, we stomped into Russia on the pretense of saving the Russian people from imminent societal collapse. And the societal collapse happened anyway. The life expectancy of Russian men dropped almost instantly by 10 years. Alcoholism, suicide increased exponentially. People were starving to death. Yeah, I'm talking about in the 80s and the 90s. The 1980s, the 1990s. It's not my intent to give kind of a half-assed history of U.S.-Soviet/Russian relations right now. I mean, first of all, I'm not qualified to do that. Like I said a minute ago, I only know what I know, and that's not very much. But it seems to me that Biden sending, and it's symbolic, another 3,000 troops, 2,000 from Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and then moving 1,000 Germany-based soldiers to Romania. You know what that's for? I mean, come on. What are 2,000 fully equipped American troops going to do up against 130,000 Russian troops? Nothing. But it's one more thing that adds to the fear and the loathing. It's one more thing. Is this necessary? I don't know. We've already threatened Russia with the most severe and profoundly disorienting effects of massive embargoes and sanctions against their country if they step 1 foot over the Ukraine-Russia border, which, as I pointed out, has already happened. So what else are we going to threaten? I think Putin understands, doesn't Biden, that there is no way in hell that the United States and Russia are going to commence a shooting war. That's not going to happen, because even whatever madness exists at the top of the Russian political structure or the American political structure or the NATO political/military structure, it's fully understood that a shooting war between the United States and Russia would not stop as a shooting war between the United States and Russia. Hi, Truth Seekers. Mike Malloy here. As you know, we've switched formats and are now broadcast exclusively on the Progressive Voices Network. So that means you get fewer program interruptions, no corporate commercials, and lots of profanity. But our format change also means some of our radio listeners no longer hear the program. It's been a while since I mentioned our podcasts, so you may have forgotten that there is a way to listen to this program anytime you need a good dose of screaming. Visit MikeMalloy.com and subscribe to our podcasts. As a podcast subscriber, you can download the program to your mobile device and take me with you wherever you go. And if you have a friend who needs a dose of truth-seeking, you can give a gift subscription as well. That's MikeMalloy.com. And never miss a minute of the uncensored fun and frivolity.